I wonder if we can do like some off-roady burning out things like... Yes, we can. That was fun. This is a Baojun Yep. This is an off-road course, and I am a very inexperienced off-road driver. So the perfect ingredients then in order to test to see if this is the ultimate cheap off-roading car. This car costs less than £10,000. But is it all talk and no trousers? Well, let's find out. Welcome to the Fully Charged Show.
If you like the Fully Charged Show, then you'll love our live events. Next up, we're in Amsterdam for Fully Charged Live Europe on the 24th, 25th and 26th of November. Get your tickets today.
Now, you may remember a few years ago we featured another Baojun on the channel, one of their first cars, and it was quite decisive. It was a very futuristic styling, something that I really liked. Buyers, not so much. But Baojun have come back, and Baojun is the SAIC Wuling GM collaboration, and they've come back with this, the Yep. Yes, that is its real name, the Yep. Now, the Yep is obviously inspired very heavily by the Suzuki Jimny, but the engineers have seen the Jimny and thought, I know, we'll electrify that. And this is the very good looking result. Now with the Baojun, we're approaching K-car territory again. We like K-cars, they're very practical for city use. Us taking it off-road is just a little bit silly really, but it's not just good looks, and they could have gone for the really cute kind of circular headlights to make it look cute and, you know, a bit more funky, but they've gone with these quite aggressive front end. And the good thing is, this is not just looks. So for example, this is really cheap plastic. As you can see, it's bending under my fingers, which means it's actually practical. If you bump into something, it doesn't really matter. It's not full of LiDARs, it's just got a couple of sensors down here. But the practicality doesn't stop there, because inside here is a 35-litre frunk, which is fantastic. So you've got the boot space in the rear, and you've got a reasonably useful frunk in here. And this is not just a normal frunk, it can also do heating and cooling to keep your food warm or your drinks cold. So really practical, what people need from a car like this. Now what I like about the Baojun Yep is that they haven't stopped at practicality at the front. Of course, it's all round the side as well. Big chunky plastic wheel arches filling these 15-inch wheels inside, with lots and lots of play in the suspension to make sure it goes over this bumpy terrain with no problems. I've even got a side step to make it easier to get in and out, because it is slightly higher. In terms of height, this is 1.7 meters high, or about 0.9 jacks. And on the roof, you will notice there is a roof rack. Now this actually carries up to 30 kilograms. So you have the frunk, you have the roof rack, and you have the boot as well. Lots and lots of practicality seeping, oozing out of the Yep. One other thing I want to talk about is what's underneath this car is a 28.1 kilowatt hour battery. So it's not the world's biggest battery. We've charged it already today because we're doing a lot of off-roading, but it's very quick to charge because it's so small, about 30 to 40 minutes on a super fast charger. The back end of the Baojun here is probably one of my favorite aspects of this car, because as you will notice, very functional, very blocky, but you'll notice it won't have a circle for a spare wheel. That's de rigueur for most SUVs. Instead, Baojun have said, let's open the fun department and make this bit super interesting, because this is a screen. That's right, it's saying opening door, be careful, and just flashing big red LEDs everywhere. Now, I'm not 100% sure of the legality of this, but apparently you can program it to say messages such as, move over you massive, and messages along those sorts of lines. But anyway, not very legal. But the thing is, I think this is a bit of a distraction, because what's behind here is quite lackluster, because it's got a massive, I don't actually know, because they won't actually tell me what the size of this boot space is right here, because it's so small. So you're thinking, oh dear, it's been really let down. Well, yes and no, because you do have this really big step, which is useful when you're changing your shoes after a big hike, if you're going off-roading like this. But also, both of these seats fold flat, giving you a massive 715 litres of boot space. So with all the practicality, the roof rack, the frunk, the boot, this becomes a really attractive proposition for, let's not forget, less than £10,000. Now, as you can see, this is actually a really easy vehicle to get into. massive openings, but it is only just one door, and it's also about the same height as me, so making it really easy to get in and out. And I've got my step. I don't really need that, but I'm going to use it, and I just slide right in. So hey, that in itself just makes it a really pleasant experience, because a lot of the smaller cars you have to shrink down into a small space. Now, let's be honest, you're not going to get all the bells and whistles in here at all, but what you do get is a really well thought out interior that offers so much for that price. I've got two 10.25 inch screens. They're not the biggest, they're not the best, but they are more than adequate for a small SUV like this. Again, Baojun, like some of the other smarter manufacturers, have put a lot of buttons down here. I've got all of my heating control buttons down here. I've got my drive mode down here, and my handbrake and my windows all here. So I've got things which actually you do need to use without going to menu all down here. I've got maps and navigation up here, and a couple of chargers. Now, the seats are not the best, they're not the most comfortable, but what you do get is this one's electronically controlled, and it comes with a heated seat function, which I certainly don't need today. But what I do like is this feeling of space. It feels gargantuan in here. It feels bigger than my Xpeng G3. It feels bigger than most big SUVs that I've driven, except it's tiny. And that's what I really like. They've really cleverly packaged this car and just thought about what's important for what people want. Now we're on this very bumpy ground. We're just gonna do a turnaround. Now it's got a dial for my reversing and drive modes. The wheel doesn't go around very far. And I have to be honest, the steering is probably one of the letdowns of this car, because it's way too light. You don't feel anything from the road. And the turning circle doesn't seem to be very good either. But I'm not full of complaints, because this is the most fun you can have in a car of this price off-road ever. I mean, this just munches up these off-road spaces. Now, you're probably wondering, what's the suspension feel like? It's a little bit noisy, a little bit crashy, but actually it's really good. We're very comfortable in here, and the car has got a lot of go, like a little oomph to really get it flying around the corners. Now, we actually went up a really steep bit earlier, and I was like, oh, we're not gonna make it, but it had no problem. This is just the rear-wheel drive version. As you can see, we're on this quite wide, bumpy road now, and it's eating it up. You know, it's never going to win any competitions, off-roading competitions, but it's good fun. Now, of course, driving in the city, it's absolutely perfect. It's fine. You know, we drove it hill on the roads. It was not all off-road at all, and it was just a breeze. It really accelerates very quickly away from traffic lights. It stops well, the brakes are good, and when you're driving and parking in the city, being kind of high up like this is quite nice, but not actually taking up all of the space of an SUV. Now, the car doesn't come with outstanding statistics. It's got 303 kilometers of CLTC range, which is always a bit of an overestimation. That's from that 28.1 kilowatt hour battery. So this has rear wheel drive. It's got a 67 horsepower electric motor driving the rear wheels, and that's more than enough, and it has about 140 newton meters of torque. Driving on these off-road bits is absolutely fine. There's always been a bit of a compromise, whether it's size, if it's safety, if it's the space in the rear, there's always something which is not quite right. With this though, it really does become part of your family. I think you can easily have your two kids, two adults in the front, you're shopping, do your everyday commute. It would do everything with no problem. Of course, we're being a bit silly, we're pushing it and going off-road, completely unnecessary, it doesn't need to do that. But what this really shows is that how the Mini EV has evolved from something which being very cheap with quite a lot of compromise, a great car, but to something much more mature and showing off how capable these small mini cars, mini electric cars are, and for great prices. That's why I think Baojun have a massive hit on their hands with this. In terms of tech and the screen, there isn't that much to talk about really. I think it's got some parking assists, you know, the mapping system's very good, very clear. This screen in front of me, again, very good, showing me how many kilometers I've done, the speed I'm doing. It's just no nonsense, and that's what I really like. It's a bit like the Polestar. It cuts down on that noise, all the stuff you don't really need, and just focuses on what you do. The great thing is this also has cameras all around it. So when you're doing reversing in a city in a tight space, the cameras come up. Or like us, if you're going very close to the bushes, it shows us how close we are to the edge of the track. Quite useful. Now, if you really do want to give it some beans, you can. I'm not going to do that, I'm too scared.
Please support our Stop Burning Stuff Patreon and help us to tackle misinformation about electric vehicles and clean energy.
This is one of my favourite mini EVs ever produced. It offers so much in a fantastic package, all for that wonderful price. But also, there's another small EV that I really like. That's the Wuling Bingo, and you can watch that video over there right now. That's a nice entrance. I'll take that out because that is absolute nonsense. God, this is bumpy, isn't it?